Welcome to our presentation on understanding bias. Today, we'll explore what bias is, how it forms, and its impact on our thinking and behavior. We'll also discuss strategies to reduce bias and to make more informed decisions. Bias is a natural part of our thoughts, allowing us to make quick decisions by categorizing information based on past experiences, cultural influences, and societal norms. However, this can lead to automatic judgments that may be unfair or inaccurate. For example, imagine you meet someone new at a social event. Without realizing it, you might make assumptions about their personality based on their appearance or the way they speak, rather than getting to know them as an individual. This is why our lesson today is important. Bias is the natural tendency that affects how we perceive and respond to the world around us. It shapes our thoughts, actions, and decisions, often without our realizing it. Bias comes from our brain's desire to categorize information quickly, using past experiences, cultural influences, and societal norms. While this helps us to navigate the world more efficiently, it can also lead to unfair assumptions and judgments about people or situations. For example, if you have a negative experience with a particular type of food, you might avoid it in the future, even if it was just a one-time issue. Recognizing and understanding bias is crucial for making informed, objective decisions. Last week we discussed stigmas. Biases are similar to stigmas in many ways, but are also unique. Let's look at some of the similarities and differences. Bias refers to personal or group preferences, which can be conscious or unconscious, while stigma involves negative attitudes or discrimination based on differences. Biases stem from individual upbringing, experiences, or cognitive shortcuts, while stigma arises from societal and cultural pressures or beliefs. Both can lead to unfair treatment and marginalization, but they originate from different sources and impact our thinking and behavior in unique ways. For example, a person might have a bias against a particular group due to stereotypes they learned growing up, while stigma might cause them to actively discriminate against that group in social or professional settings. How are biases formed? Well, they're formed through a complex process, beginning in early life and continuing throughout our lifetimes. In early development, biases begin even in infancies, as babies can prefer familiar faces and voices. As children grow, they're shaped by their environment, including socialization, identity to groups, media, and culture. Cognitive processes like categorization and confirmation bias also play a role. Biases are reinforced through personal experiences, social influences, and cultural norms, becoming deeply ingrained over time. For example, a child who grows up in a community where certain stereotypes are prevalent may internalize those beliefs and carry them into adulthood. There are several different types of biases, including cognitive biases, social biases, and other. Cognitive biases are systemic errors in thinking that affect our judgment and decision-making, such as confirmation bias, anchoring bias, availability heuristic, and overconfidence bias. Social biases influence how we perceive and interact with others, and they include types like affinity bias, ageism, gender bias, and racial bias. There's other types of biases as well that might include implicit biases, those that are unconscious, and explicit biases, those that are conscious. Also, selection bias, which is often a bias in research, and reporting bias, where you only report some information. Understanding these biases help us to recognize their impact on thoughts and actions. For instance, affinity bias might lead you to favor a certain job candidate who shares similar interests or background, even if another is more qualified. Cognitive biases are systemic errors in thinking that affect our judgment. For example, cognitive bias leads us to seek information that confirms our biases, while anchoring bias makes us rely too heavily on the first piece of information we receive. The availability heuristic causes us to overestimate the likelihood of events that are more memorable, and overconfidence bias results in excessive confidence in our own answers or abilities. Recognizing these biases can help us to make more balanced decisions. For example, if you hear a news story about a plane crash, you might overestimate the danger of flying, even though statistically it's very safe. Two key parts of the brain are involved in forming biases: the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is the brain's emotional center, responsible for processing feelings like fear and quick responses to perceived threats. This can lead to unconscious biases due to snap judgments. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for thoughtful, rational decision-making, helping us to override impulsive responses when we slow down and reflect. As older adults, biases rooted in cultural and generational norms can become deeply ingrained, but cognitive reappraisal and exposure to new perspectives can help retrain the brain. For example, if you have a long-standing bias against a particular group, learning more about their culture and experiences can help you to challenge and change your initial reactions. Cognitive reappraisal is a psychological strategy that involves changing the way we think about a situation to alter its emotional impact. By recognizing biased thoughts and reframing the situation, we can find more neutral and fair assessments. This process involves challenging our assumptions and allowing the prefrontal cortex to override the amygdala's impulsive responses. With practice and repetition, our brain becomes better at pausing, reflecting, and making more rational decisions. For example, if you feel anger towards someone who cut you off in traffic, cognitive reappraisal might involve considering that they might be rushing to an emergency, which can help reduce your anger. To reduce biases, you can take several steps. You can acknowledge your biases, accept that you have a bias, and work accordingly. Or you can ask a trusted friend about your biases and maybe try to talk with them about ways you can deal with these biases. You can go beyond your own comfort zone, engaging with people that you would not normally engage with. You might want to take responsibility of your biases by using self-monitoring or self-regulating. For example, creating a journal might help you to take responsibility of your biases. Another thing you might want to do is admit your mistakes. None of us are perfect. It is very difficult to eliminate all biases, admit it, recognize it, and then be able to move forward. Finally, you want to be able to keep an open mind. That's important for recognizing and modifying our biases. These strategies help us to become more aware of our biases and work towards reducing their impact. As an example, engaging with people from different backgrounds can challenge your bias and broaden your perspective. If you typically avoid certain neighborhoods due to preconceived notions, visiting them and interacting with the residents can help dispel those biases. Let's talk about some practical exercises that you can do to help increase your self-awareness of biases. First, you can take an implicit association test, such as one that is offered by Harvard. Reflect on the results and consider how these biases might influence your behavior. Or you can try journaling. Note any instances where you have made assumptions or judgments, and then reflect on these to identify patterns of bias. Practice seeing situations from another person's perspective. For example, if you disagree with someone, try to understand their viewpoint and the experiences that might have shaped it. Mindfulness meditation can be used to help you become more aware of your thoughts and feelings. This way, you can recognize your biased thoughts as they arrive and choose more balanced responses. You might want to ask trusted friends or colleagues for their feedback on your behavior and decisions. They may notice biases that you are not aware of. Finally, actively seek out experiences and interactions with people from different backgrounds. This can help challenge stereotypes and broaden your understanding. By incorporating these exercises in your routine, you can increase your self-awareness and work towards reducing the impact of bias on your decisions and interactions. Our course website has several resources that you might find helpful. One of them is a Smithsonian online exhibit called The Bias Inside Us. You can find the link on our course website. Once you get there, scroll down and continue to advance as suggested. Consider visiting the section called Retrain Your Brain. You will see many activities that might help you to recognize and modify your biases. Test yourself on how biases have evolved over the years on this site as well. Also on our course website are several videos which can be very helpful in helping you to identify biases and the impact on our thinking. So make sure to go back to our course website to view some of these videos and activities. In summary, bias is a natural tendency that affects how we perceive and respond to the world. Unlike stigma, which comes from societal pressures, biases stem from personal upbringing and neurological tendencies. Both can be reduced through awareness and strategies. Try cognitive reappraisal to try to reshape your biases, as well as expose yourself to diverse perspectives. By recognizing and challenging our biases, we can make more informed and objective decisions. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Remember, the first step to overcoming bias is awareness, and with practice, we can work towards more fair and balanced thinking. Thank you.